Thinking about the themes and issues, whether you're studying language or literature or both, is a very, very powerful way for you to score grade 9. Okay, so the reason why that is because literature is about humanity, nothing more, nothing less. And themes and issues are a way for us to study the conflicts at the center of the stories. And that way we'll develop a much more perceptive analysis. We always want to be concerned with what's going on with humanity. Virginia Woolf once said that books are mirrors of the soul. An interesting quote, because we're not really sure if she's talking about mirrors of the author's soul in the sense that the authors are writing about what inspires them, or are books the mirrors of our souls? Do we find meaning in them because we relate our experiences and our beliefs and our ideas to what's going on in the story? So it's quite interesting there in the way that this quote relates to both, or can be interpreted as relating to both the author and the reader at the same time. So we're always going to be thinking about humanity, conflict, and the soul. So humanity as in all of us, now, in the past, and the present, and the future as well. And we'll be thinking about all the conflicts that are going on. What conflicts do people face in particular times? And we're going to be thinking about the soul. So what I mean by that is the soul of the protagonist. Whose soul are we supposed to be caring about, and why do we need to care about them? What are the conflicts that that person has gone through? You can read the quotes here, but probably the most important one is, well, actually they're all important. Conflict is the condition of human nature. It's the essence of story, and it shapes character and the soul. Okay, so think about someone like, for example, Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. Why does he become disconnected from humanity? We meet him when he's already disconnected from humanity, but we find out later on that that disconnect comes from a troubled relationship that he's had with humanity. So the dysfunctional relationship he's had with his father, the death of his sister, and the separation of him and his fiancée Belle. So he lost faith in humanity, and that's why he turned to money instead. But Dickens is showing how his reconnection with humanity actually helps to solve the problems. So all mixed in that as well, we've got the issues of capitalism and responsibility as well. So how are conflicts represented in literature? They're represented through issues such as, well, we could look at them as topics and subjects, or themes. They are very, very similar, but there is a difference between them, and I think that difference is actually quite profound, and we want to really focus on why there is that difference and how that's going to help us as well. Okay, so what are themes and issues? They're often used interchangeably, but there is a difference between them, and there are many common topics in topics and themes in fiction and even non-fiction writing. So issues are a matter or a point of discussion, debate, or dispute. For example, gender roles, ambition, and coming of age. Gender roles, you'll find that in Macbeth. Ambition, you'll find in Macbeth as well. Coming of age, you'll find in some of the sample papers of the AQA language exam. So themes, like I said, are sometimes used interchangeably with topics and issues, but really a theme is the author's comment on an issue or topic. Okay, so you'll often find people talking about themes and they'll use singular words such as ambition or gender roles, or well, phrases such as gender roles. But really, it's better to think about themes in terms of the author's comment on these issues. So, for example, uncontrolled ambition leads to self-destruction, as it does in Macbeth, or it leads to the destruction of society, or both. Reconnecting with humanity cures societal ills, such as in A Christmas Carol. If you can think about the issues in that way and at least make one comment like that, especially in your language paper, you're gonna reach a much more perceptive analysis, and it's something that will really impress the examiners as well. So what examples of common issues in literature? Coming of age, overcoming the odds, family, good versus evil, and abuse of power. You might want to pause this video now and think about your own, well, the books that you've read, the topics that the text that you've been set, and what topics they actually deal with. By the way, I will put a list of topics, common topics, in the description of this video, so have a look at that. So why do we need to think about issues and themes? Simply because every single thing in the story is going to be connected to the issues and the themes. So the way that the author characterizes their protagonists, their antagonists, they're all reflections of the issues and the themes. Same with the language. The language reflects the issues and the themes. The form as well. If you're studying literature, it's really important for you to think about, is it a play, is it a novel, is it a poem? Why has the author chosen those forms? And what about the structure as well? What about the narrative perspective, the plot, the setting? How do those things reflect the issues and the themes? Symbolism as well. Symbols can be anything within the text, can be characters, setting, and even images. So you're going to get an insert that looks just like this one. You'll notice there's some information in the front. This is for the language exam, by the way. A mistake that a lot of students make is ignoring this information in the front, and there's a lot of information that you can often get from that, and you can develop a lot of ideas from the information at the front. So don't just skip this, pay attention to it. Don't dwell on it too long though. Look at it really quickly. Practice picking up and annotating it as well, picking up ideas from this bit. So for example, if we're looking at the Hunger Games, we might say, well, the title Hunger Games is very oxymoronic, so it might suggest that there's something wrong with this world, something upside down with it. Suzanne Collins is a female writer, so she might have some feminist ideals. The protagonist is 16 years old, so this is probably about coming of age. She's right in the middle of her teens. She's not an adult, she's not a child, but she has to go through some really tough decisions in her life, and that really shapes her as a character. There's also family involved in this as well, so we can understand that this is about family relationships at the same time. When you turn to the first page, you'll see there's some more information at the top here, and again, don't skip this, annotate it. And I've said here that this could be about survival, and it could be about totalitarianism as well. So what do we have to do for question 2? Question 2, we have to look at how the writer uses language to describe a particular thing. In this case, we'll say the cat. Now, I chose the cat on purpose because it's something that might be quite difficult to talk about, but you'll see that even the cat has a purpose in the story. Okay, make sure you analyze the effects of the writer's choice of language. That's where you get all your marks from. Use your quotes well. Okay, so choose the quotes well. That's what they mean by judicious range of textual detail, and make sophisticated and accurate use of subject terminology. So try to be really clever. Try to know your subject terminology, so metaphors, similes, etc., etc. Just remember though that subject terminology is not the main thing that scores you the marks. They support your answer, but the meat of your writing should be about the effects of the writing. So I'm going to read a sample answer for question 2, and we'll go through it afterwards. So the most striking aspect of Suzanne Collins's language choice is the general matter-of-fact style she adopts. For example, Katniss's blasé tone in I think he still remembers how I tried to drown him in a bucket may come across as a complete surprise to the reader, because we would expect some level of remorse or indication of regret from someone who is admitting to trying to take the life of another being. However, in this text there is a clear lack of emotive language, which seems to point to the idea that Katniss has become accustomed to the experience of loss of life. It seems as though death is so common in Katniss's world that it has lost its power over her, resulting in a partial emotional paralysis. We could also see the lack of vitality in her emotions as representing a death of humanity, resulting from the corruption, tyranny, and abuse of power of the ruling elite. It also emphasizes the struggle for survival that the people in this dystopian world experience, because Katniss did not appear to want to kill the cat for any reason except for survival. It is simply survival of the fittest. The metaphor, another mouth to feed, tells us how Katniss sees the cat. It is nothing more than a mouth which reduces her family's chances of survival. Therefore, all the language in this section of the text appears designed to illustrate how difficult it is for people to survive, and it illustrates the difficult decisions that Katniss has to take in order to help her family survive. Another prominent feature of her language is her use of adjectives. For example, she describes the cat's nose as mashed in, its eyes the color of rotting squash, its belly swollen and ear half missing. These adjectives appear designed to modify the imagery of the text to create an unsettling sense of deformity. Perhaps Collins is illustrating how corruption, tyranny, and abuse of power causes nature to be deformed, because they go against not only humanity, but also against the natural world. Okay, so try and go through this quickly. In the yellow highlights, I've highlighted the technical terminology of the language, so matter of fact, blasé. I'm talking about the style and the tone here. Emotive language as well, metaphor and adjectives. So I haven't used a lot, but enough to make it detailed. You can see the blue text are the quotes. Remember that I'm embedding the quotes as well. This is really important. A lot of students put the quote and then do the analysis after that, and it's kind of the quote is kind of separate from the analysis. So you really want to take a few words or a phrase and just embed it in your writing and use it as part of your writing. You can also see I'm using tentative language. So for example, may could also see, seems as though. And in the sort of pale pink here, I've put the topics. So death of humanity, corruption, tyranny, abuse of power, struggle for survival, deformity. And so you can see these are the issues that I think are at the center of this text. And you can see I've picked up on a few more than I was actually planning to write about in the beginning when I annotated, but that's fine. As you go along, you'll probably develop your ideas. So you only want to really start getting your brain thinking about the ideas at the beginning and annotating them. If you come up with some other ideas as you're reading, then that's fine as well. Another reason why using the issues is really important is because students fall into the trap often of sort of retelling the story. You get this very concrete retelling of what has gone on in the text, but the examiner's not really interested in that. They want to know the hidden stuff. And once you start using these sort of abstract nouns, you'll see that your analysis automatically becomes much more perceptive and deep. And notice as well that I'm using a lot of complex sentences. This is another mistake that students make, is writing in simple sentences. So you want to make sure you're using your conjunctions: because, which, or, however, because. Okay, you can even use but and therefore as well. I've got at the bottom. Okay, so just make sure you're using complex sentences. Whenever you make a point, automatically put in a conjunction, because that will force you to think about developing your point and making it much more perceptive. Is there anything else on this page? Oh yeah, at the bottom you can see I've highlighted the last sentence, and you can see that this is actually me putting in what I think is the author's view of the topics, of the issues that are at hand. So here I'm actually talking about the theme, what I think might be the theme. So perhaps Collins is illustrating, sorry about the mistake there, that shouldn't be an apostrophe there. Perhaps Collins is illustrating how corruption, tyranny, and abuse of power causes nature to be deformed, because they go against not only humanity, but also against the natural world. Okay, so why is she talking about corruption, tyranny, and abuse of power? Well, because she's showing how it destroys the natural world and it causes deformation. If you read the text, you'll see that that's what she actually talks about. For example, her mother is no longer beautiful. As in Katniss's mother, she says her mother is no longer beautiful. She talks about the workers in the district as well. They've got hunchbacks and they've got swollen knuckles. So there's this imagery of deformity that goes on in the story. What about question 3? Question 3, you have to think about structure. Now, I will be doing much more in-depth analysis of both language and structure, but I'm just going to show you a sample answer that you might want to use, or you might want to try and achieve in your own analysis. Okay, once again, all the marks come from, well, the majority of the marks come from your analysis of the effects of the structure. Okay, so the text focuses on a character called Katniss, and the reader gets to see her from 2 different angles. At the beginning, she is at home, waking up, and we learn about her bitter relationship with her sister's cat, Buttercup. Then, in the second half of the text, the writer changes focus to Katniss getting ready to go hunting, the melancholy coal miners, and her dangerous hunting routine in the woods. This links the 2 halves of the text together because the bitter relationship she has with the cat is brought into context. Trying to drown him may seem cruel, but because the reader has had an insight into the extreme difficulties Katniss has in providing for her family and the harsh plight of the other citizens in District 12, we understand at this point that it is actually a matter of survival. She tried to drown him because the act of providing for her family itself is a matter of life and death, with venomous snakes and rabid animals that make hunting for food seem deadly. So once again, you can see that I've actually repeated some of the issues, such as survival. And that's not a problem. Literature is interconnected. I showed you before with the diagram how everything reflects the themes. So whether you're talking about structure or language, it doesn't matter if you have to repeat the same point. That's not a problem. So as long as it's perceptive. So you can see here I'm talking about relationship, family, harsh plight, survival, and matter of life and death. The green highlights I've got here signify the technical terminology of the structure as well. Okay, so if you want to pause this and have a deeper look at it, then go ahead. Well, I'm going to move on now. So one question I always get is, how do I improve my ability to understand themes and issues? I would say the most important thing is take an interest in humanity. Think about the problems that people face. What are they? Think about the problems that people faced in the past. What problems do they face now? And what problems you think people might face in the future? And think about why the author sets the stories in the times that they do. If it's in the past, why then? What issues were people dealing with then? And same for the present and the future as well. Okay, so take an interest in humanity. The second thing I would say is link your knowledge from history, psychology, and art. The overarching idea of this is that you link wider knowledge to the stories. So now you should be beginning to understand that language is not just about words. It's about much more than that. And that's really why students struggle. You want to try and practice being wide-read, read different sources of information. And a really good tactic is to link your knowledge from history, your history lessons. If you do psychology, that's a great way to gain insight into literature as well, because literature is often about the psychology of the characters' minds, what's going on in their minds. And also religion is a major topic in literature as well. So number 3, write your analysis in complex sentences. I've been through that in this video, so you can have a look at that again. But make sure you're using complex sentences. It really adds a lot of quality to your writing. Read critical essays. Now, what I would say is read essays ranging from GCSE up to even university. So read a range of those. Read the GCSE to understand, look for sort of perfect answers, and try to see how they structure those answers in your exam structure, and look at how those are structured and think about how you can do the same. But then look at A-level and university as well. Remember that you can now achieve a grade 9, which is beyond the old A star. It's now equal to an A star star. So you can go beyond the old A star and you can look above that. So reading A-level and university style work will help you to develop your vocabulary, your sentence structures, the way that you write. Everything will change. Okay, so make sure you make an effort to read those as well. Read authors' biographies. Think about your literature texts, prioritize those first, and read about your the history of your authors. You know, what things forced them to write the stories that they did. And probably the most underrated technique in revision is practice. I've heard so many times people saying to me, no matter how much I practice, it doesn't make a difference. And the only reason why that could possibly be is because you're not practicing properly. You're probably not being conscious enough when you're practicing. If we take Anders Ericsson's strategies for practice, so he's a researcher based in America who wrote the book Peak, and he studied masters of their crafts, so sportsmen and doctors and all sorts of different people. How do these people become masters? Think about the very, very best performers, the top sportsmen in the world, you know, people who are famous for being, you know, perfectionists and masters and the very best in the world. How did they get there? He said one of the most common traits between all those people at that level, even if they're in different disciplines, one of the most common traits is that they all practiced deliberately. A lot of practice, but they really thought about how they were practicing as well. And what you really want to do is eliminate all your weaknesses. So find out your weaknesses first. Is it complex sentences? Are you weak in reading? Do you struggle to read? Is it writing? Is it the speed of your writing? Are you weak in that area? So try and find out exactly what your weaknesses are and deal with those first, tackle those first, because you don't have to worry too much about your strengths. Your strengths are already there, they're already strong. But usually what happens is students have a strong area and then they have a weak area which brings them down. So you want to get rid of that weak area first, and then you'll see everything will sort of mold together. It will sort of fuse together, and you'll become much stronger, much more confident, much more efficient. So focus on your weaknesses and practice eliminating those first. Make sure you set regular times where you do your practice, whether it's 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week. Start with what's manageable for you, but make it regular. Don't go 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2 months, 3 months without practicing. Make it something regular, at least once a week, if not twice per week. Okay, and that's it. And I hope this has been useful. I'll be doing more videos on all sorts of different things, practice strategies, best ways to practice. And if you like what you see, please like this video, share it, and subscribe as well. Don't forget to hit the notification button as well. Okay, thanks. Bye.